Hello and welcome to the Wire Talks. I'm Sidharth Bhatia. Should marriages between partners who belong to the same sex be permitted? That is the crux of a case being heard in the Supreme Court right now. Petitioners have argued that marriage is a union of two people, not just a man and a woman, while the government is completely opposed to this idea. This is not a simple issue. Many other laws will have to be changed, and that is not in the court's purview. The court has suggested that the government could think of an administrative solution that does not involve the recognition of marriage. And the government has turned around and said that it is open to the idea and that it would set up a committee to look at what could be done. Millions of members of the LGBTQ plus community have been watching this with interest and expectations and a lot of hope. We invited Onir, the well known filmmaker, to discuss this issue with us. Onir is an Indian filmmaker, producer, screenwriter, and editor whose best known work is My Brother Nikhil, which was one of the first mainstream Hindi films to deal with AIDS and same sex relationships. He won the national award for one of his other films, I Am. He's one of the few openly gay directors in the film industry, and his memoir, I Am Onir and I Am Gay, is an account of his growing up years and his coming to terms as a gay man. Onir, welcome to the Wire Talks.
Thank you.
I'm sure, like many in the LGBTQ plus community, you've been following the case in the Supreme Court very, very closely. How do you think it's going?
There have been ups and downs. Sometimes, like initially, it started with excitement and hope, and then I remembered the 2013 Supreme Court verdict, where we were all hopeful, ready to party in the evening, and it went all the way different. So I think now all of us are much more cautious, especially what has been exhausting and mentally, at times extremely difficult is to see the kind of aggression, to see the kind of hate, to see the kind of opposition that's coming from center for something which, as Justice Chandrachud puts in very often as a reminder that ultimately all we are talking about is equal rights. And one feels hopeful because there's someone like him, but at the same time, when one hears certain comments by, suppose the law minister, then it's extremely distressing to, say that, okay, even if the Supreme Court does something, we take it back to the parliament and might overrule it. So it, going through these ups and downs, because also one does not know, I at least do not know as a layman all the nitty-gritties of what happens if suppose tomorrow the Supreme Court says that we are going for marriage equality. What can happen in the parliament, if the center still decides to continue opposing it and changing something. So all these thoughts, I think not just me, a lot of us are thinking about it. And when people keep telling that why don't you go to the parliament, let it go to the parliament through the process, and it's almost like we have, a lot of us have, waited a lifetime for it to get decriminalized, and we don't want to wait another, I don't know how many years till they actually, because the parliament as such till now has been extremely homophobic in their, and it runs across parties. It's very patriarchal, male, energy out there, which I think just is not comfortable with the idea of homosexuality and queerness.
In general, you're saying
Yeah.
homosexuality and queerness in general.
Yes, in general, like the overall, you can feel it, the energy. It's there, even before when Shashi Tharoor tried to table, it just gets thrown out immediately, every time these discussions come up in the parliament. So one does not trust, and also the thing is, what is this sense of entitlement that this set of cisgendered men will decide how much of equality we are entitled to, despite us being equal citizens. We are supposed to be equal citizens with equal voting rights in this country. We contribute to the economy of the country, to the art, to the culture, to everything, whereas suddenly in a social sphere, in certain aspects, we are not considered to be equal. One set of people are supposed to decide how much of equality is okay, is permissible, will not, make the society crumble.
Okay, we'll come to one or two points you raised a little later. But meanwhile, you did say that in the beginning there was a little bit of a excitement. Do you think that you said ups and downs? Do you think that expectations had been heightened at some point during the hearing?
I think the first week kind of ended with more of hope, whereas the second week has been really, second part of it has been even more rough, because I think the more they realize how futile and how senseless is most of their argument, the more aggressive and more unkind. I will say, I'll use the word unkind, because some of the terms that's being used, almost making as if the entire queer populations are pedophiles, and like really really atrocious comments, so which started more towards the second half of the proceedings. And I feel that comes from a sense of desperation, because I think right from the way we've been arguing for the case and the way Justice Chandrachud and his team has been reacting, it looked more, positive and hopeful, and that what makes sense and logic. And I think that suddenly there is this, also this game of saying that, okay, we can constitute a body and look at those specific problems, be it bank account or housing, and I feel that why, why do we have to treat it as something else separate?
Yeah, so that part I was going to, in fact, come to that perhaps courts have realized that it is not a question of just saying, okay, from tomorrow you can have same sex marriages. Many other laws will have to be changed, which is not the court's mandate, which is under Parliament's purview. And, they go up to some 30 odd laws like pension, like inheritance, like nominations, and so many other things. So, do you think that it's that simple? A. And B, do you think that the idea floated by the court and immediately accepted by Attorney General, which is who's representing the government, and eventually even by the petitioners, that let's look at everything, including cohabitation and various other laws of inheritance, etc., but without the marriage part. So, what I'm trying to say is that it is not as simple as it may appear. Do you think that that's the case?
I don't think so. I feel that actually it's very, very simple. If one wants to do it, if one wants to, it's just a question of, just like, once mentioned, that whatever is there as a man and a woman and one replaces with the word partner or spouse, immediately everything falls into place. If there's a man and a woman who is willing to, as man and wife can go and open a joint account, it just becomes that it is replaced, and it could be two men, and everything else follows. We are the same, we are all at the end of the day human beings living in the same country, following, we follow every other single law. Do we have separate traffic laws for ourselves? And you know so I just find that it is ridiculous that something which is, it is the will. If one has the will, of course all those 32 or whatever number of laws need to be addressed, but I think they are not so complex if one wants to do it. And one should, because what is more important is human rights, what is more important is equality. So if things need to change, even if it takes time, the process has to start. But if that will is there, if that understanding is there, that what is right now the status is fundamentally wrong, then the process, like it has happened in all other countries. No, we are not in some separate planet. We have already examples of, I think, more than 32 countries where same sex marriage is accepted. Why can't we learn? We can have easily military exercises with other countries. Let's have some exercises learning about same sex marriage laws and adoption laws, and how you know counseling happens to for be it adoption, be it marriage, and how are these societies dealing with this. Is it that all these societies have just collapsed? So I just feel that if the will is there, there is enough resources, enough example, enough research work, enough, practical examples to see. There are so many Indians, because of this law, there are many Indians who are from the community who, whenever they can, they migrate, they leave the country, and they are married, some with children, living happily abroad. So how is it possible there? These are the same Indians. We might have taken up citizenship elsewhere else, but basically we are from this country, which, we don't become some other kind of creature that we need, something. It's so difficult to figure out how are we going to have a law that deals that tomorrow. Like, for example, simple thing, like, if my partner has an accident and I go to the hospital and he has to be put into a ventilator or whatever, I don't have the right to sign. Now, how is it very difficult to change this where I have as much right as a woman would have, or a man would have, a heterosexual couple would have on each other's lives? So what drastically needs to change there? It's just a question of, instead of it being man and woman, that one opens up as just partners, or couple, whatever word, spouse.
I'm asking a little bit of a provocative question, as it were. Why do members of the community want marriage? Because you said 32 countries, it's actually 34 around the world have introduced laws, but it's still 32 or 34 out of 180. Why do they want to get married?
My answer is very, very simple. It's not, for me, it's like, why do you have the right to even ask me this question? Who, why does anybody have the right to deprive me of something which they have, right? As a citizen, it's my choice. Simple. And I'm not doing a crime if I want to have if I want to be married to someone. And it's not that tomorrow, if you pass the law, every second queer couple is going to get married, just like every heterosexual couple does not believe in marriage. So there will be a lot of us who do not believe in the institution of marriage, and just like it's there in the heteronormative world. So why is it that we are even asked this question? Why is this choice? This choice is about equality. Whether we exercise it or not is our right. you know it is, if someone feels happy to get married, just like you or any other, anybody else who is heterosexual, why should anyone have the right to stop that person from? Now, I don't believe in marriage. That doesn't mean I start saying that, oh, let's stop the institution of marriage in the hetero law. Why do these heterosexuals want to get married, right? And in a country, why should minority, we are minorities. In a democracy, every minority right is supposed to be the same. So why does one group of people have the right to question me? I'm not questioning them.
You don't see this idea that's been floated in the court and the government immediately accepting it. You don't see that as an incremental step in the right direction.
I would see it as a step forward as long as they are not opposing the Marriage Act, because the Marriage Act, that is something that should happen with the Marriage Act. All those things need to be addressed. They should be addressed, and the government should actively take part in it, but not by first blocking the Marriage Act. Then it does not mean anything. That means, again, you're depriving us of our right as equal citizens in this country.
Now, we saw with Article 377 after it was repealed, and there were a lot of hiccups on the way when it was repealed, and there was a lot of celebration and all that. Societal prejudices did not vanish. We know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're going to take a long time to vanish. Similarly, do you think that there is a, I won't say danger, but there is a kind of, suppose this is allowed and there is still, families will come down heavily on their children, society, you may not get place to stay, all those things will still happen. So how will things change?
So my answer is again simple. This is not something specific to the community, because whenever one talks of problems, it's almost like it's specific to the community, but it is not. Today, if you are talking of, like, we have had laws against dowry, we have laws against domestic abuse, against whole lot of child marriage, for example, for years, right? But it's still a very much prevalent factor in our society. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the law, because that is the first step, that there are people who can still go to the judiciary to be addressed if one has that. At least, like today, when we have been decriminalized, at least I can sit here with you and argue. I can make a film without getting censored that, okay, the relationship that I'm showing is criminalized by law. There was a time when I was told that, oh, in your film there are two men looking at each other romantically. You cannot show that. No one can tell me that. So similarly, I feel that yes, tomorrow if I get married, there might be people who have a problem that I'm living with my partner, but maybe not. Similar problems people have when, I mean, today, unfortunately, in many cities, even if you're a couple, if you're from mixed caste or religion, you don't get to stay in every building. There are people who anyway have problems, if you're a vegetarian, non-vegetarian. So we will navigate through all that like everyone else is navigating various challenges. That I think we are a strong community. We have navigated through a lot of prejudices, hate, oppression over decades, centuries, however. So we don't shy off from having to negotiate with all that more. But what is more important is to be empowered by law, because when we're empowered by law, it is easier to fight these battles.
The law is something that you can use then as a weapon
Absolutely.
to go against prejudice. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Tomorrow, if I want to buy a house, and I'm legally, my partner is recognized as a partner, then I can have a legal document saying that this house belongs to both of us as partners. And tomorrow, if something happens to me, he will inherit this house. I know of people who have been living together, and when one partner has died, the other partner has been thrown out of the house by the family, have not had access to his partner's body. So these things happen when we are recognized legally as partners. Then I feel that we'll be empowered to at least try and fight for our rights. Right now we can't even try because we are not legally empowered.
So, in that sense, it's a very, very important flagship right. Is that, yeah.
Absolutely, because it's not just about that wedding ceremony, which is of the very often people make it sound like that, and people don't understand that there is so much more. There are people who will say that, oh, you can do in your bedroom what you want. That's one of the recurrent comments that you, but why do you have to be in our face? And I'm like, but everything about you is on our face right from childhood. And wedding is not about bedroom. Marriage rights is not about bedroom. It is much more. It is so many more other rights that is associated with it.
This case has been going on. It's on the front pages every day. It's one of the really high profile cases of recent times. Is it my sense, and you can correct me, but my sense is that even prominent members of the LGBTQ plus community who may be in very, very influential positions in the country have not outed themselves, so not been able to support it, or and if they could and did, they would carry a lot of clout, because at least they become some sort of role models, and the word spreads that these are the people who matter, who are saying these things.
I always have had this stand that I know, like a lot of people talk about being in a closet is a choice, and everyone needs to. I understand it's not easy and one has to navigate, but I feel that people who are empowered, and that's why it's so heartening to see someone like Duti Chand come out, the first probably sports person of that stature coming out and saying I'm lesbian, and she wins the Olympic medal for the country. I think that is empowering, and also, also breaks the myth of this urban. It's a urban whatever, almost like as if it's a fashion. I mean, she comes from, rural Orissa, And I always feel that, one knows of so many industrialists, people from my industry, politicians, journalists, you know, and I just wish that they had, because they're empowered enough to come out. And when you see that, when you see a Team Cook come here, and, it's an irony that he's here visiting India while the, court is hearing this case, and you see how right from the prime minister to everybody is wooing him, for investment. And you realize that at the same time in the court there are so many like really atrocious homophobic comments happening. So I think if many more people like this Tim Cook would come out from India, it would also, one is, inspire many more people, youngsters, to come out, claim their space, because all this makes a difference the more one is out. And also opinion makers. Sometimes when I'm these days, for the last 1 week watching television, I'm tired. I only see the same faces because there is only a handful of us speaking everywhere. And one knows that it's not just this handful of us, there is so many of us who have the agency to be able to actually speaking, and they're not doing it. And I think it comes from also fighting their internal homophobia. When you grow up in a society, like for example, when I grew up, I didn't even know anything about myself, because I was missing in my literature, in my science, in my history, in my films, books, nowhere. So till a certain point in life, you are an invisible being, and then you kind of learn that, okay, this is me, accept yourself, and then this whole journey of making others see that, yeah, you ought to be treated as a equal human being. So it's constantly navigating your identity, and I think everyone does not find it easy to do that. Some people find it still difficult to come out of those memories of childhood, the memories of shame, the memories of being considered lesser, you know and I think all that can only change when you have sexuality and gender being introduced to children. A lot of people talk that, oh, if children see parents, two men, what will they say? Who is the father and mother? But that's the problem. If from childhood they're, made to respect that you could have two mothers, or a mother and father, or two fathers, what matters is parents who love you. And there will be children in your class who identify as queer, and it's okay. And then there are these three genders and sexuality, and you normalize it, because that is the most important space, is how children grow up. And I feel that as a society, that's why it will take time, because all these people, the society we have around us, have grown up having looked at us, and we also ourselves having looked at us as lesser. you know so it won't change overnight just because the court empowers us, but it's important because there is a certain value to your legal status. So why do people, a lot of people want the marriage thing instead of just staying as live-in couple? Because there is a certain value. The society looks at you differently, and a lot of us want that. you know
We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to the Wire Talks. What did you came out early on in your career in an industry known for hiding things, like most industries? I should not pinpoint it,
yeah.
but you came out. You made a film, your most famous film, My Brother Nikhil, about AIDS and same-sex relationships. You then went on to do many more, and then you wrote a book in which there was absolutely no ambiguity. What did people say to you in your business when you did this?
I think, unfortunately, my industry is quite.
I mean, firstly, your peers.
I feel that, my industry is an industry which has this double standards all the time. So, in one side, I feel that, like even today, there will be platforms, everyone celebrating my film, My Brother Nikhil, and I am. After so many years, every Pride Month comes, they'll all want to do inclusion talks. But when it comes to, even like in 2005, what the challenges I faced when I wanted to do anything which is queer narratives are the same challenges which I face now. Because now, of course, the doors have opened up a little bit more because of the 2018 judgment, but it has opened up to narratives which are narrated by cisgendered men and women about us. So suddenly I'm always watching films which are others look at me, where the validity of my life is all about someone else accepting me. And as a filmmaker, for me, in 2005, when I was making My Brother Nikhil, it was important that, at that time, it was about family acceptance. When I made 2011, it was more about the law. I was speaking about how it was misused by the police. But now, when I'm making a film, you know, I want to talk about our lives, which I would call from the queer gaze, because my life is not taking baby steps like the heterosexual world is trying to take baby steps in understanding me and accepting me. My world is much more beyond their acceptance and their celebrating me. I need to celebrate myself. We need to celebrate our stories. And I don't see our industry easily, you know, all through my career, my films and also my book, because the industry has its awards or whatever which recognizes be it literary work or film work, but never has the industry actually, apart from meeting me and saying, wow, you're brave and you're doing this, it into actual action. Never have the films been recognized, neither has the book been recognized by the industry. Of course, when they meet me, they all will say that how brave I am. But for me, it's not being brave. It's just being honest. It's being honest about myself. And I feel that the industry, unlike Hollywood, where you see that there's a conscious effort year after year to, slowly, it's also, it's not that overnight everything will change there, but there's an effort to empower films which talk about diversity, which talks about women empowerment, which talk about LGBTQI. Even this year, three of the films which were in the final lists, and two of the films that won, Be the Whale and Everything, that's a big name, I keep forgetting, both had very strong queer elements. I see that here we celebrate only when it's seen from a, again, very heteronormative perspective of our lives. And I have people actually telling me constantly that, Onir, aren't you tired? Why are you always fighting? You know, can't you just chill? And I'm like, but I'm not fighting. I'm just, it's easy for you because you're in the other side of the hedge. You have everything given to you on a platter when you're born. Being a heterosexual cisgender, especially men, women have to still, and that's why I find that women are much more supportive in the entire journey. And I am fighting because I'm demanding what is my right, and you have to be a coward not to want to speak up, for that. And, a lot of us live in our castles, where you have a perfectly, but I feel that when you live an entire life, and I see this industrialist and really powerful people, and you can't even say, I am whoever I am, and your entire life is over. How do you feel inside? I sometimes wonder, you know, and I feel that, I don't, when people ask me, when did you come out? I don't know, because, I never made it a point to go and say that, hi, I'm, gay, but whoever my friends, right from when I came to Bombay, all of them knew. All of them were a part of my journey. My street friends coming with me to gay parties to just, experience what happens. And, so I didn't have like beat with my family. I didn't have this evening when I said, Mom, Dad, brother, sister, let's sit and talk, So I feel that one fine day, just like they realized that my sister was having a boyfriend, my parents realized that I was in love with someone. We never had conversations, about, oh my God, what has happened? I don't know how, but they were accepted. My, whoever I had a relationship were accepted without, I feel extremely fortunate. I don't know for how I am. I have been in a family like that, but right from my siblings, there has been a total acceptance without ever questioning.
You mentioned something in passing, but your identity, your sexual identity, your, you know, the fact that you've been so open about it, unlike many others, and names do the rounds, has it affected your career?
Yes, I think so. Initially, I used to think no, but I realized I was lying to myself by saying that there is no homophobia, because I realized that despite, like I mentioned, that my films being talked about, traveling across the world to film festivals, being taught in universities, I realized even after so many years, I'm still making films independently. The last film that I made actually was something where the studios and all, whoever I was talking with, backed out very last minute because of certain statements that I'd made publicly. And I just used my life insurance money and made my film. So, I feel that somehow that in a way, maybe I have become so used to being independent that, it somehow I figure out and do it. But the fact that having to do it, despite now there being OTTs and whatever, have to be constantly, you know, theoretically being told that, oh, you are this voice for LGBTQI cinema and activist, but when it comes to empowering that voice, I just feel more resistance, because every time I will go, they will be like, oh, we are taking baby steps, or not right now. And then I'll see some cisgendered man or woman making something which is problematic.
Do you think that being
Yeah, so also I feel that the problem is the prejudices I feel is just because I've been out and proud gay, people also want to restrict your identity as a filmmaker, that acha he to only makes those kind of films, because for a long time they won't even say gay or queer. They don't want to utter that dirty word, as it seems. But there is this thing of trying to, people, though in my actual till now the number of films I've done, there are more films which are not really of queer narratives. But feel that that is the perception, and people, you know when my name is suggested for various things, will just dismiss, saying that, oh, but he makes those kind of films. There are even filmmakers who, before making a film which has a queer narrative, have come up to me and said that, Onir, guess what? We're making your kind of film. And I want to tell them, don't. Because if I'm making a film, I hear of filmmakers telling that, oh, we had to do research and we had a consultant to help us understand. And I'm like, oh, when I made my last film, which was about a straight relationship, I didn't need a consultant and I didn't need someone to figure out how do straight people fall in love or make love, or, so if it is so difficult to understand our lives, then just stay away. Let us do it. But then they all also want that tick mark, that okay, now it's also, I am the voice.
No, not only that, I think there is this, my opinion, there is this compulsion or temptation to become a progressive voice and be seen as doing it. And, the other thing is, there has been so much social media and other pressure that, you must. So they'll do
Yeah,
one tick mark on caste, one tick
yeah.
mark on sexuality.
There is this observation I'll tell you, and because I was discussing this with Apurva Asrani, the writer, filmmaker, editor, who is also out and proud, and we were seeing so many filmmakers, even when this Supreme Court discussion is happening, talking about it like, oh my God, there's so much drama happening. We should make a film out of it, and they're all these cisgendered straight men, you know and there is this tendency of also appropriating our lives, our stories, and our journey, and quickly taking it over, because quote unquote they're commercially bigger names, so things will flow. So you suddenly see that your struggle, where you've been the voice, you've lived in experience, is taken over by someone who pretends to be suddenly the authority of your narrative. And similarly, when I approach a lot of artists, with a queer or gay character or lesbian, they'll say that, oh, Onir, but we have just done a gay role or a lesbian role. And I'm like, but what is a gay role or lesbian? You have done maybe 30 films where you're playing straight character. There's nothing called a gay role or a gay character. We are different shades. We're not one homogeneous or gay thing. We are different people. We have different stories, different lives. So I feel that understanding, because everyone wants that tick mark. Oh my God, I've done one gay role, so now I'll be thought as this very open minded, progressive actor who gets an award and then does not speak anything about what is happening at the Supreme Court or anywhere, because of course we are artists and we are not supposed to be political. But this is not political. This is about human rights. It's about rights of the character that you pretend that you care for and benefit by doing that character. So you are being extremely dishonest when you benefit from our stories and you are silent when it comes to giving us that support in reality.
But to be honest, I mean, to be give you the other side, say, if there are not many openly gay filmmakers out and about, then if the stories get told, why not let the stories get told?
My reaction to that is simple. There was a time there were not too many women filmmakers. There was an effort, and there are these days female collectives and different things that even OTT platforms have to empower more voices of women behind the camera. And we are talking of equal parity in terms of payment and everything. So why should one not think, are we again the second class citizen, that our journeys, that even the filmmakers that are there won't be asked to tell our stories? Okay. And there is no one considering that, okay, it's almost like, okay, we have done one LGBTQI show or film out of 100. you know so it's almost like it's again this tick marks, and it's not coming from a compulsion that they are not just LGBT stories, they are stories. And the more we have them, the more there will be acceptance in society, because people need to see us also bereft of all this, what you call stereotypes that we have. I do not think that in an ideal world that only gay people should do their stories and straight people do their stories. But I feel right now we are more empowered being from the queer community to tell the stories of straight people, because we have accepted you all the way you all are. But the straight community is still struggling to understand us, so let us tell our stories till you figure out how to understand us as equals.
The repeal of Article 377, which decriminalized homosexuality. And since then, we've had the Pride Parade, which wasn't there some years ago. Many parents have accepted their child's sexuality. So, do you think that things are changing and will change further in the future? Where do you see things emerging from now on?
I think that is the whole point, that all this difference is also happening because of what happened in 2018, And I feel that a lot depends on what happens in July when the verdict comes out from the Supreme Court, because the minute you are empowered in each and every space as an equal, I feel that lot more people, a happier nation where more people are happy because they can be open and proud of their identity, be it is religion, caste, or sexuality, where it's recognized and celebrated. I feel the nation grows better. So it's not just about us, it's about brain drain not happening. It's about creative or talented people from the queer community not leaving the country and having to seek other safe spaces where they can live with dignity, where queer children don't have to commit suicide because they're constantly getting bullied in school, because no one talks about, no one empowers the other children with the knowledge that it's okay. And we had such, very sad case even recently in Delhi with Arushi Aish. So I feel that all this, I'm hopeful. I think we've always, despite ups and downs, what keeps us going is hope, for the community. And that's why even in 2013, despite the negative, we kept on. And that's why 2018 could happen. So I feel that, things will have to change for the better. We are, we are not that tiny in terms of number, and more of us are becoming aware that this is not okay, and this so-called minuscule population is not that insignificant. It's significant enough to be heard, and we will be empowered.
It's always wonderful to hear a note of hope and to end a discussion on a note of hope. You know how things move in this system. Sometimes they go forward, sometimes they move backwards, and sometimes suddenly things move forward and when nobody is expecting it. So, if that is your hope, and presumably that is the hope of so many others, I mean, you must have a good feeling about having this hope. Otherwise, how do you move personally?
Yeah, I feel that's how I look at everything in life, not just, about this quote thing. It's about how to make my films, because those challenges are always there. And then when one figures out how, it's the joy is so much more because you have crossed those hurdles. So I feel that every time though we shouldn't have had to fight those battles, but because we fight those battles, I think also we become better. I would like to at least believe that it happens with most of us, that we also start recognizing other minority rights more. I feel, of course, there are people who don't, even in the community, but overall, I feel when you yourself have faced various forms of discrimination, you become aware of the quote unquote other, and you want to, for me it's extremely important as a person that not to be just talking about LGBTQI rights, but other minority rights equally. And I feel that is the growth that one gets being a part of the community, that you see, much more than just, it's not just your life. You see, I think we are better allies even for women, women for all feminist movements. I think the queer community, and likewise we have better, because on top of it there's patriarchy which is oppressing all of us, you know so yeah, I feel that it kind of, I feel that when you look at everything, every such ultimate win as victory and as empowerment, then it doesn't not, you look back and you feel good about it, that okay, I did it, we did it.
Wonderful. Once again, Onir, thank you very much on that very hopeful and clear headed explanation of why this is important. Clear headed only because a lot of people are still a little confused. And I'm sure it's clear that you have really, really worked on this and you have good reasons. You presented very, very strong reasons why this should happen. I can only say, obviously, I cannot be fully empathetic about what somebody like that goes through. But I can say that one is faced with so many different kinds of societal prejudices at this very moment that every victory is a battle won for the war to be won eventually. So, thank you once again, Onir.
Thank you, Siddharth.
That was Onir, the well known filmmaker and author, too, I would say, speaking about the ongoing case in the Supreme Court about same sex marriage, or rather, equal rights for same sex couples. We'll be back once again next week with another guest. Till then, this is Sidharth Bhatia and the rest of the team saying goodbye from the Wire Talks. You can check out this podcast and other interesting ones on the Wire website, the IVM podcast website, app, or wherever else that you get your podcasts. Goodbye from me, Sidharth Bhatia, and the Wire Talks podcast team.